You stared at that notification for 10 seconds before you even breathed, didn't you? Maybe longer. Your chest tightened, your stomach dropped. And in that single moment, months of healing, months of convincing yourself you were past this, months of rebuilding your life without her in it. All of it just evaporated. One message. That's all it took. And now your mind is racing. What does she want? Does she miss me? Is this real? Should I respond right now or wait? Should I pretend I didn't see it? Should I call my friend and analyze every word? Here's what I need you to understand before you do anything. That message didn't arrive by accident. People don't reach out after months of silence on a whim. There is always a reason. Always. And the reason behind that message is going to tell you everything you need to know about what comes next. So before you type a single word back, before you start replaying every memory you thought you'd buried, before you let hope hijack your judgment, stay with me through this entire thing. Because what I'm about to walk you through will give you something more valuable than her attention. It's going to give you clarity. And clarity right now is the only thing that protects you. Let's start with what just happened inside your body, because that matters more than you think. The moment you saw her name on your screen, your brain didn't process it like a normal notification. It didn't treat it the way it treats a text from a coworker or a friend checking in. It processed it like a survival event. Your nervous system lit up, dopamine surged, cortisol spiked, your heart rate shifted, your palms might have gone damp. And all of this happened before you even read the actual words she wrote. That's not a weakness. That's biology. When someone was deeply embedded in your emotional world and then disappeared, your brain categorized that absence as an unresolved threat. Not logically, emotionally. Somewhere beneath your conscious awareness, your mind has been scanning for this signal the entire time, even when you thought you'd moved on. So when she suddenly reappears, your brain doesn't calmly say, "Oh, interesting," she texted. It screams the missing thing is back. Pay attention to this immediately. Drop everything. This is why that message feels so much bigger than it probably is. Your nervous system is reacting to the return of a signal it's been hunting for, even when you thought you'd stopped looking. You didn't stop. Your subconscious just got quieter about it. And this is crucial to understand. Right now, in this flooded state, you are the least equipped person to interpret what that message actually means. Not because you're foolish or emotional, because you're overwhelmed with neurochemistry that's designed to pull you toward connection, not truth. Flooded people don't read words. They read hope. They project meaning onto neutral sentences. They fill in every gap with whatever version of the story makes the ache go away. That's exactly why you need this. Not her explanation, not your best friend's theory. You need a framework that cuts through the emotional noise and shows you what's actually driving this moment. Let me tell you what most people assume when she reaches out after months. They assume it means she misses them deeply. They assume she's been lying awake thinking about them this whole time. They assume some kind of epiphany struck and she finally realized what she walked away from. And look, I get why you'd go there. It's the version of the story that feels the best. It's the one that validates every sleepless night and every moment you spent wondering what you did wrong. But here's the uncomfortable truth. That assumption centers you in her decision, and that's not always where you are. Sometimes the message is about you, but more often than people want to admit, the message is about her, about something she's going through, about a gap that opened up in her life she's hoping you'll fill again. Not because you're the answer, but because you're familiar. And familiar feels safe when everything else feels uncertain. I'm not saying this to hurt you. I'm saying this because the difference between someone who reaches out because they genuinely want you back in their life and someone who reaches out because they need something from you, that difference will determine whether your response leads to something meaningful or just resets the cycle of confusion you spent months climbing out of. So let's get specific. Let's walk through the real reasons she's texting you right now. The first reason, and this is the most common one by far, is that she lost access to the feeling you gave her. And notice, I didn't say she lost you. I said she lost the feeling. There's a difference, and understanding it changes everything. When you were together, you provided something specific. Maybe it was emotional security. that steady, grounding presence that made her feel like the world wasn't going to fall apart. Maybe it was consistent attention, the kind that made her feel seen and chosen every single day without having to ask for it. Maybe it was laughter, safety, desire. Whatever it was, she had a steady supply of it, and she never had to think about where it came from. It was just there. Like oxygen. You don't appreciate oxygen until you can't breathe. When things ended, she didn't immediately feel that absence. There's always a delay, especially when she was the one who created the distance. In the early weeks, there's relief, novelty, maybe excitement about a new chapter. But then weeks become months. The new situation, the single life, the other person, whatever replaced you, it doesn't deliver that same emotional frequency. It doesn't hit the same spots. And slowly, almost unconsciously, she starts feeling a void she can't quite name. She might not even connect it to you at first. She just knows something is missing. That void sent the message. Not a revelation about your worth. Not a sudden burst of love. An emptiness she wants filled. And you need to recognize this. Because if you respond thinking she finally sees your value, but she's actually just trying to plug an emotional gap, you're going to pour energy into a situation that drains you dry. You'll give and give thinking you're rebuilding something, and she'll take what she needs until the void feels manageable again. Then the silence comes back, and this time it hits harder because you chose to reopen the wound yourself. The second reason is that something in her life fell apart, and you represent stability. This one shows up constantly, and almost nobody talks about it. She lost a job. A close friendship imploded. A family crisis erupted. Her mental health took a nosedive. Some foundation she was standing on cracked, and suddenly the ground doesn't feel solid anymore. When people feel that kind of instability, their brain does something predictable. It reaches for what felt safe. You felt safe. This isn't necessarily calculated or manipulative. She's probably not consciously thinking, let me use him for emotional support. It's deeper than that. It's instinctive. When we're in crisis, our nervous system defaults to familiar sources of comfort, the same way a child reaches for a blanket in the dark. You were her blanket. And even though she walked away from that comfort, her body remembers it. The way you identify this reason is through timing and tone. Ask yourself what's happening in her world right now. Did something recently go wrong? Is the message less about your relationship or missing you and more about needing to talk, needing a shoulder, needing someone to listen? Does it feel less like I want us back and more like I just need someone right now? That difference is everything, because if you mistake a cry for help as a declaration of love, you'll step into a caretaker role that has nothing to do with partnership. You'll be useful, not wanted. And you know in your gut, those aren't the same thing. The third reason is she saw you doing well, and it disrupted the story she built to justify leaving. This one is subtle, quiet, and brutally common in the social media age. Here's the psychology. When someone walks away from you, they need a narrative to make that decision feel right. Maybe the story was that he wasn't driven enough, or we just weren't right for each other, or I need someone who challenges me more. Whatever version she settled on, it served a purpose. It protected her from doubt. It lets her sleep at night. But then she sees evidence that contradicts the story. You posted something that radiates growth. A mutual friend casually mentioned how great you're doing. She saw you out somewhere looking confident, centered, happy, and suddenly her narrative doesn't hold up. If the reason she left was that you weren't enough, but now you clearly are enough, her brain can't hold both beliefs at the same time. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance, and it's deeply uncomfortable. The fastest way to resolve that discomfort? Re-engage with you. Test whether the version of you she's seeing from the outside matches up close. But here's the part you need to hear. This reach out isn't necessarily about wanting you back. Sometimes it's about needing to know. I need to investigate. Needing to either confirm that you've changed so she can feel regret, or discover that you haven't really changed so she can feel justified again. Either way, she's resolving her own internal conflict. You're part of the equation, but you might not be the point. If you mistake her curiosity for genuine desire to reconnect, you'll open a door she's only peeking through. And peeking is not the same as stepping inside. The fourth reason is guilt wearing a mask that looks like care. People don't talk about this one enough, but it's more common than you'd think. She didn't treat you well toward the end. Or she left abruptly. Or the way things unraveled was messy, and she knows, somewhere, in the quiet moments, that you didn't deserve how it ended. That guilt has been sitting in her chest for months. Not screaming, just humming. A low-grade discomfort she can mostly ignore during the day, but that surfaces at night or in moments of stillness. Here's the thing about guilt. It doesn't always announce itself honestly. It rarely says, "I feel terrible about what I did to you." Instead, it puts on a costume. It shows concern. It sends a text that says, "I've been thinking about you. Hope you're doing okay." Or just wanted to check in. On the surface, that sounds caring. Thoughtful even. But beneath it, the real function of that message is self-soothing. If she reaches out and you respond warmly, she gets permission to believe it wasn't that bad. She gets to rewrite the ending. She gets to put down the weight she's been carrying without actually doing the work of a real apology. I want to be clear. She's not evil. Guilt is deeply human. Wanting relief from it is natural. But you need to see the mechanism clearly, because if you respond thinking she's reaching out because she cares about you, when the real engine is her wanting to feel better about herself, you become someone's emotional aspirin. You soothe her headache, she feels better, and you're left standing there wondering why the conversation fizzled out after 2 days. Your compassion deserves better than being someone's guilt relief program. Now the fifth reason, and I need to be straight with you. This one is the rarest, but it exists, and pretending it doesn't would be dishonest. She genuinely realized what she lost, not because a crisis forced her hand, not because your Instagram made her jealous, not because guilt kept her up at night, but because real, honest, sustained self-reflection led her to understand that walking away from you was a mistake she doesn't want to live with. This kind of realization doesn't happen quickly. It takes months, sometimes longer. It requires her to have moved through the full cycle. The initial relief of leaving, the exploration phase, the comparison with other people or other versions of life, the gradual loneliness, and finally, the clarity that comes when you stop running from what you feel. Not everyone gets there. It demands emotional maturity, self-honesty, and the willingness to sit with regret long enough to learn from it instead of just numbing it. The message that comes from this place looks different. It's usually longer and more deliberate. It references specific things about you, not just the relationship in general. It acknowledges what went wrong without deflecting or making excuses. It doesn't demand a response or expect you to immediately welcome her back with open arms. There's a humility to it, a clarity. It feels like someone who sat in the uncomfortable silence long enough to actually hear what it was telling them. If you're reading this kind of message, you'll feel it in your body. Not just hope, which is loud and urgent. Something quieter. Something that lands in your chest like honesty settling into a room. But even with this reason, please slow down, because recognition is not the same as readiness. She may fully understand what she lost and still not have done the internal work to show up differently this time. Knowing something and being able to act on it are two very different things. So how do you tell which reason you're dealing with? Let me give you a framework you can actually use. First, look at the content. Is the message vague or specific? Something like, "Hey stranger," or just "thinking about you"? That's low investment. She's testing the water without revealing anything real. She's keeping all the power on her side. A message that names what happened, that references something real about your connection, that clearly states why she's reaching out. That carries more weight. Not guaranteed sincerity, but more substance. Second, examine the timing. What's going on in her world? If you have any window into her life through mutual friends or social media, zoom out and consider context. Did something recently fall apart? Is there a pattern to her reach outs? Holidays, late nights, Weekends when loneliness peaks. Timing reveals motive more honestly than words ever will. Third, look at the task. What does she actually want? Is she asking to meet up and talk seriously? Is she asking for your time and attention without offering anything concrete? The more specific and vulnerable the ask, the more likely it comes from a real place. The more vague and non-committal, the more she's keeping her exit door wide open. Fourth, and this requires brutal honesty with yourself, look at the pattern. Is this the first time? Or has she done this before? Reached out, drawn you back in, then gone quiet again? If there's a cycle, you're not dealing with a breakthrough. You're dealing with a loop. And loops don't break because you hope hard enough. They break because someone makes a different choice. Now let me tell you what to actually do with all of this. If the message is vague and low effort, you don't owe an immediate or enthusiastic response. Take your time. If you choose to reply, match the energy she's bringing. Not to be petty or strategic, because your emotional investment should be proportional to what's actually being offered. That's not a game. That's self-respect wearing its simplest clothes. If the message feels driven by crisis or guilt, you can be kind without reopening the door. You can say something compassionate without handing over access to your inner world. Something like, "I appreciate you reaching out, and I hope you're doing well," without launching into a 2-hour heart-to-heart. Kindness does not require unlimited access. Remember that. You can care about someone's well-being from a safe distance. If the message feels genuine, specific, and humble, take your time anyway. Sit with it for a day, maybe 2. Let the initial neurochemical flood recede so your thinking brain can catch up with your feeling brain. If what she's offering is real, it will survive a 48-hour pause. If she gets impatient or upset because you didn't respond instantly, pay attention to that. Genuine remorse understands it lost the right to demand your timeline. And here's the step almost everyone skips. Before you respond to her, respond to yourself. Ask what you actually want, not what you miss, not what your loneliness wants, what you want for your life going forward. Does she fit into that vision as she is right now? Not who she was at her best, not who you hope she'll become. Who she is in this exact moment based on what she's showing you. If the answer is unclear, that's fine. Sit with the unclear. But don't let nostalgia fill in the blanks for you. Nostalgia is a beautiful liar. It shows you highlight reels and calls them the whole movie. If it helps, grab your phone right now. Open your Notes app. Write down 3 honest answers. What did this relationship give me at its best? What did it cost me at its worst? What would need to be true for me to re-enter this and still respect myself? Those 3 answers will guide you better than any text she could ever send. Here's what I want to leave you with, and I mean this. That message sitting on your phone feels like a door reopening, and maybe it is. But here's the part nobody says out loud. You are not the one who needs to walk through it. She knocked. That was her move. But the handle is on your side. You decide whether it opens. You decide how wide. You decide the terms under which someone gets to re-enter a life you rebuilt with your own hands. You are not the same person you were when this started. Those months of silence changed you in ways you might not even fully recognize yet. You survived the thing you were terrified of. You rebuilt your mornings without her being the first thought. You found ways to laugh again, to feel okay again, even when okay seemed impossible. That didn't happen by accident. That happened because you're stronger than you give yourself credit for. So whatever you decide to do with that message, decide from that place. The place of someone who already made it through. Not the place of someone terrified of being alone again. Because the version of you that learned how to stand without her, that's the version that deserves to make this call. Not the version from 6 months ago who would have said anything just to make the silence stop. You already lost her. And you're still here. You're still breathing. You're still moving forward. Let that truth be the foundation of whatever happens next. Not fear, not hope dressed up as certainty. Just the quiet, steady knowledge that you are going to be okay regardless. Because you already proved that. If something in this shifted even a small piece of how you're looking at that message right now, tell me about it in the comments. What's your situation? What did you feel when you saw her name? I read every single comment, and sometimes just putting it into words for a stranger changes how it sits inside you. And if you want more content like this, the kind that helps you navigate these moments with your dignity intact and your thinking clear, subscribe and stay close. I've got more coming that I think you're going to need. I'll see you in the next one.